Good day and welcome to today's episode of Focus On. In this episode, we will be looking into and discussing the upcoming Black Management Forum annual conference. The conference serves as a platform for industry experts and leaders to assess the future of broad-based Black economic empowerment. The theme for this year's event is reflecting on South Africa's journey towards 30 years of socio-economic transformation. Joining me to take us through what lies ahead of us in the conference is Monde Ndlovu, Deputy Chair of the Black Management Forum. Monde, thank you so much for joining me. The time has come again. A task was given to you to work on Triple BEE. The conference is upon you. What is the intent of the conference? How mature is this conversation going to be in this particular conference?
Thank you very much for having us. It is always a great privilege. I'm Deputy Chair of the Policy and Research Committee of the Black Management Forum. Just so that people don't get, they think I'm Deputy President. No. When you say Deputy Chair of the BMF.
We're happy to give you the title.
Yes.
So just own it and you'll deal with them at the office.
So firstly, the intention of the conference, it's an annual conference set up in such a way that we have conversations around key transformational issues of the country, try to reflect on certain gains the country has made, both at a policy level, legislative level, and also trying to imagine the future of how the future will look like according to the BMF. And of course, the stakeholders that the organization then brings at the conference in terms of panelists, panel conversations, it's not necessarily people who are BMF members, but it is key stakeholders, government, private sector, and also in the civil society space, key organizations that we think can help us reflect on towards the 30-year mark of socioeconomic transformation the country has been on since 1994. So that is the one intent. The second intent of the conference is that the president of the country, President Ramaphosa, 2 years ago, gave the BMF a task specifically around Triple BEE. As we would know, the BMF in 1997 was the one that conceptualized the BCOM, as it was called, so the Black Economic Empowerment Commission. And then the deputy president at the time, who's former President Thabo Mbeki, requested current President Ramaphosa to chair the BCOM, and then they came up with that groundbreaking report in 2001, BMF heavily involved in that process. Then in 2003, BMF again pushing for the broad-basedness of the law, which came into effect. So that intent has come back to BMF and said, we started this journey together. I was there as the president. Please can you then reflect on it and come up with recommendations for the country on how to strengthen it, how to take it forward. That's the second intent of the conference. And I would say maybe the third intent of the conference is the following day we have the annual general meeting where members of the BMF will then reflect on the conference and come up with key resolutions coming out of the conference that will be communicated publicly and especially to the office of the president. So in a nutshell, that is the focus of the conference, and that is why the conference as well, and the way forward post the conference.
It's been quite a journey. I mean, 30 years is very long. The country has changed fundamentally. We have so many more challenges now. So when you go into the conference, what do you think are some of the key messaging that will come forward, as in what has worked with Triple BEE, but also what concerns us that needs to shift? Because that's really the conversation around policies and regulations that have been in conversation amongst a lot of people. Are those going to be targeted? And in your mind, what do you think some of them could be?
So when we look at the panels that will take place, so firstly the first panel would be reflecting on the performance of Triple BEE, the intended and unintended consequences, because there's been unintended consequences. So some of the unintended consequences of broad-based Black economic empowerment is firstly the ownership issue. Right, so there's 5 elements. The ownership issue has always been an unintended consequence. So one of the key unintended consequences there is you want Black people to own the economy. How do we do it? and some people call it old school BEE, like guys in the financial services, especially the banking sector, they'll talk about old school BEE. So you come into a company, you raise debt, right, for the shares, you get locked in there, right, for 10 to 15 years. The unintended consequence of that specific process is that the company immediately gains as a beneficiary of triple BEE. But the black owners are in debt. They rely on the performance of the business, especially if it's listed, right? So they rely on the share price and the dividend payout to reduce the debt, and locked into that time period. The other unintended issue around ownership is some of the principles, right? So, for an example, once empowered, always empowered. Now, how does that make logical sense? Especially if you and I have gone out of the transaction after 10 years, we've taken our money, but the company continues to rely on those empowerment credentials moving forward. So there's a lot of unintended issues just looking at the ownership framing and some of the principles and the flow-through principles, etc.
But is the foundation is also going to be inspected? Because ownership that is economic ownership via debt, you walk away, but as black people, there is no true empowerment. That same company cannot be established, or a similar entity cannot continue to be built and build a legacy. So we're talking about ownership of something for a period of time that can then be discarded or changed and given to somebody else. Yet where does the real, true machinery ownership, where we're partaking and participating, is that conversation part of how do we then reframe into real ownership?
Very important question. So part of the other panels, some of the issues, for example, the targets will come into play. The issue of ESD as an example, the question of real transformation, you have the different levels, etc. It's a very fundamental issue. How do we get to the intention, the true intention of black ownership with the current structure, right? So that needs to be further unpacked. The understanding of ESD procurement is precisely to develop black business, right? So, and we've had the issues around the procurement bill for some time, etc., and all those challenges, and ESD as well. The one challenge around ESD that we must note, a lot of these businesses, when you say they are participating in the ESD space, they don't necessarily invest in upcoming black businesses that have a lot of economic impact. So when I say economic impact, I'm looking at the drivers of the economy, which is your banking and financial services space, manufacturing, etc., trade space, etc. You don't see them developing a similar kind of black business. Right. So you don't see a spa going to go develop another black spa, right, in terms of the ESD process.
Even a manufacturer.
Or even a manufacturer.
Even an agricultural farm.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you don't see a Nedbank or ABSA going and developing a black ABSA and a black Nedbank. Right?
And they don't necessarily need to develop the same entity. Let's take a look at the Stellenbosch example, right? Black business supporting the insurance company. So as a big business, that's the insurance company we're going to build up and support. Sometimes even giving birth to them from internal, outside, giving them permanent 5-year business, 5-year contracts. That's how a lot of these businesses have been built, on long-term contracts. So are black businesses getting the right type of long-term contracts? Are employees empowered to branch off and build entities? And are we, as you're saying, are we giving birth? Is big business giving birth to smaller business? Is that part of what transformation should be like? Because that is proper ownership versus paper ownership to a few.
So that is a big challenge, to say big business. What exactly are you really doing in developing black businesses that have economic impact? Right? So not just talking about saloons in the township. I mean, if you look at the whole township drive, and you look at some of the businesses that they're trying to develop, you really ask yourself this question: that some of these businesses that they're trying to lift from the township, a lot of them not necessarily have massive economic impact, right? So again, we've got to be very brave to say, yes, there's a Township Development Act in Gauteng, which was signed into law, right? They've identified around 10 industries. One of those industries is the financial services sector. You have the behavior of oligarchs in the system. You have 3, 4, 5 major players in almost every industry in South Africa. That is an anomaly that we're faced with. And it's an old issue which the government had flagged even in the 90s to say, we've got this systemic challenge of oligarchs. How do we break them? And of course, if you are dominant in the market, you want to maintain your dominance, right, from a business point of view. But from a transformation point of view, you've got to have patriotic capital, patriotic leadership, patriotic thinking, that if we increase the consumer base, you are creating markets of the future. But if you keep narrowing the consumer base, you're destroying markets of the future.
The very environment that you need to thrive. Yes. So I love the conversation around patriotic environments. And I'm wondering, is the conference going to be able to showcase maybe the change of heart, of focus of South African businesses, as they actually do realize, I think to some degree, that a lot of our economic health rests on them. So do we have, and will we be able to showcase that, especially when it comes to innovation and technology and new things that are coming in the world? Do we see an openness in our market?
There is a banking institution, part of their reporting annually, they hang the 17 Sustainable Development Goals on BBBEE framework. So in other words, there's no need to replace BBBEE with the Sustainable Development Goals because they are expressed in the framework. So you're having a lot of those challenges as well to say, let's scrap the thinking of this, but it's actually groundbreaking because the Sustainable Development Goals are in agreement with what it's trying to drive fundamentally as well. So yes, there are those issues that will come out, but the focus is BBBEE. And also with the other focus will be the role of women in BBBEE. So in the whole empowerment space, what role have women played? So and you've got to showcase that.
Socially, they lead for the betterment of everybody. Yes. So they lift up so many. So their role is so important. But I think it is, I wanted to hang on your word, it is incumbent upon all of us to do the right things. So this is going to be a very interesting conference. And I want to say thank you so much for joining us. Wishing you all the best. And that's how we wrap the conversation for today. Thank you so much to my guest, Monde Ndlovu, Deputy Chair of the Policy and Research at the Black Management Forum. And thank you to you, our viewers. Please stay tuned for more on CNBC Africa.